The Carolina Hurricanes had an off day on Tuesday, but that does not mean that news did happen throughout the day. We get some big ones as the Hurricanes announce more dates for their Whaler jerseys and why that is the case. Also, basically going to talk about the elite jersey matchup we're going to have on Thursday between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Colorado Avalanche. And then finally, we get to talk about Shayne Gostisbehere as there's been news throughout Tuesday and what's going on with that. All of that and more on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes.
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the Everyday for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin, the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Hours, also the co-host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Like I said at the top of the show, we are going to be talking about the Hurricanes unveiling more dates for their Whalers jersey outside of Whalers night that was scheduled, or basically still is scheduled for January 29th against the Utah Mammoth. We're going to talk about those two other dates and what that means moving forward. And then we're also talking about the Colorado Avalanche and Carolina Hurricanes' epic sweater matchup, not only for Thursday, October 23rd, but also on January 3rd back in Raleigh. And then finally, we're going to talk about Shayne Gostisbehere and what it means for the Carolina Hurricanes moving forward for the rest of the road trip. But before we jump into all that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and with $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Now, it was announced Tuesday morning, coming from the Colorado Avalanche, that they are bringing the Quebec Nordiques jerseys back. And we're talking about the Primo light blue, powder blue, however you want to do it. The Florida League jerseys are back once again. And this is probably the first time we actually seen these jerseys since the team relocated to Colorado. Now, we did have the reverse retro jerseys a little while back where they did have the Florida Leagues on the bottom, but it was in the Avalanche burgundy and white. And now we're getting the Nordiques version of that. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more about that, later on. But subsequently, the Carolina Hurricanes also had an announcement regarding those Whaler jerseys that they're going to wear. And it's not just one night, not 2 nights, but 3 nights that we'll be seeing these white Whaler jerseys being worn by the Carolina Hurricanes throughout the 25-26 season, with the first one being on October 23rd, of course, obviously in Colorado against the Avalanche, and then January 3rd when the Avalanche come to Raleigh to take on the Carolina Hurricanes, and then finally on Whalers night against the Utah Mammoth. And of course, the Hurricanes on socials made a really great joke, wearing the Whalers jerseys against the Nordiques and then against the Angels' newest franchise is objectively funny, which is basically the duality of the NHL. Welcome to a world where it's Whalers Nordiques and Whalers Mammoth, if you want to look at that way. Of course, if you saw it on social media, the Hurricanes did drop their Whalers uniform schedule, which was for 1 day. Now it's 3 days, and they put at Nordiques, versus Nordiques, and then versus the Mammoth. It is very interesting when you see the Nordiques logo and it says Nordiques and not the Avalanche. It's almost like, did someone reboot NHL 94 and brought it into 2025 as like, surprise, we got the Nordiques and the Whalers back, which they also posted on social media that it's the rivalry renewed of the old Adams division. Yes, if anyone remembers from the late 80s, early 90s, we're talking, when it was the, divisions had names, and then the conferences were, the Campbell and all that. So we're talking old school 90s NHL logos and names and all that stuff. So it's an Adams division rematch or a renewal between the Hurricanes and the Avalanche. Now it's going to be the Whalers Nordiques. So it's really cool how that's going to happen. And the fact that It's not just for the 23rd in Colorado. I like the fact that they're also going to do it in Raleigh, which is really nice for the fact that they're like, no, we're going to do it not just one night, and it's in Colorado. We're going to do multiple nights. And the fact that, too, it's you got to give a lot of props to the Hurricanes equipment staff because basically they've been hauling around their Whalers gear for almost 2 weeks, and not one person has mentioned it. No revealed on the socials, but anyone on the social team, no reporters have said anything from the Hurricanes or the teams they faced. This has been under a lock and key since the announcement that the Avalanche had of bringing the Nordiques jerseys back. And then you hear, hey, Hurricanes are dropping their Whaler jerseys too for an extra 2 nights. And like I said, it's pretty cool for the fact that it's not just in Colorado, but it's also going to be in Raleigh too. So that means Hurricanes fans can see this epic jersey matchup. So it's really awesome to see how they're pulling this off. And quick note on the other games, if anyone is interested in what when the Avalanche are going to be the Nordiques, of course, like I said, they got October 23rd against the Hurricanes. Then they have the Montreal Canadiens coming to town. That'll be a huge one as well, because you're talking about the old, Quebec rivalry between those two teams. Then obviously January 3rd back in Raleigh. And then they have the Maple Leafs, the Penguins, the Canucks, and then the Golden Knights. So there is going to be a total of 7 games that the Avalanche will be wearing the Nordique jerseys. And, of course, with the Carolina Hurricanes, we all know it's the 3 games, the 23rd, the 9th, and the 29th. Of course, the last 2 are going to be in January at home. But overall, like I said, it's really cool the fact they're going to do that. That the Hurricanes are going to be able to do this, and also too that it's a classic jersey. It's probably going to be the best jersey matchup of the whole season. I don't care what you say or if there's any arguments like, well, these are really great jerseys, but it's like you're talking old school 80s and 90s hockey jerseys, and the fact that they're with the sleek modern 25 design. And, of course, I know it's Fanatics. It's not, we're not looking at the Adidas's, which is crazy that the fact that Fanatics is going to run this back. And Adidas never did it, but I think it's fun. I think the fact that you're kind of seeing this, like, throwback, retro, going back to the roots and showing it like that. I know a lot of fans of both of these former franchises might not feel too keen about it because we hear it every year for Whalers Night, how Hartford fans aren't fond of it. But, I mean, technically the Hurricanes do own the history. Same thing like the Avalanche own the Nordiques history. They do own those records, and they do own the license to use the logos. The Avalanche finally did it, and the fact they did it in their 30th anniversary season, it tells you how long this kind of sat in the back burner, and they felt like, well, it's year 30. Why not? And there you go. But it's pretty cool, like I said, for the Hurricanes to not just do Whalers Night, but they're like, you know what, it's a monumental night. They probably collaborated with Colorado, and they're like, let's just do it. And now you're going to have an epic jersey matchup with these two teams. And the fact that it's not just one night, they're going to do it 2 different nights. And the fun part, too, is the fact that I don't remember the last time 2 teams faced each other in the same season, and they both never wore their standard 3 jerseys that they have, the alternates, the homes, and the roads. Both teams are rolling with throwback jerseys, even if it's for one time, or of course the Avalanche 7 times. So that's really interesting. I can't remember. I don't know a last time where 2 teams just wore their throwbacks against each other twice in the same year, and they're never going to wear their primary home or roads or alternates or stuff like that. So it's really awesome to see. Like I said, the Hurricanes are going to be wearing their Whaler jerseys not once but 3 times this season, and 2 of them are going to be against the Avalanche. And I hope that either in Colorado or Carolina, or maybe both, we get some NHL 94 theme music, because that would be absolutely epic to see. And it's cool the fact that they're kind of leaning into we're throwing it back to the Adams Division rivalry and stuff like that. So the socials are going to be absolutely insane, because we all know how great Whalers Night stuff is from the Hurricanes, but I cannot wait to see what Colorado does, in Denver. And of course, when they do come to Carolina in early January, that's going to be a lot of fun. Now, that being said, what can we really look forward to with both these jerseys and just overall why these could be the best matchups? So stick around. We'll talk about it a little bit more here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools makes it so much easier to understand where your money is going and how to make it work harder for you. So that being said, don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Let's be real. Making excuses don't solve everything. Or pretty much anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. Or it just happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougit comes in. Rougit.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougit makes it to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms or no in-person appointments. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. So visit rugiet.com/lockedonAHL for 50% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/lockedonAHL. Don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONAHL so they know we sent you. Rougit. Stop making excuses and start making moves. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So I know we kind of talked about it a little bit in segment 1 about the fact that the Hurricanes are bringing back the Whalers jerseys not once but 3 times, and the fact that the fact that the Avalanche are bringing their Nordique jerseys back not once but 7 times, and the fact that the Hurricanes are doing it twice. And like I said, it's still crazy to me for the fact that the equipment staff were able to haul these, like they've got their regular bags of their road jerseys and all their stuff, and then they're also carrying all the equipment for the Whaler stuff too. And you're talking about 2 sets of equipment for almost 2 weeks. And that's just... that's crazy to think about, but either way, for me, I kind of said in segment 1, this is going to be the best jersey matchup of the entire season because you're going back to, like I said, old school Whalers, Nordiques, AM Division jerseys. And if anyone had played, AHL 94 back in the day, I know I did. That was probably one of my favorite games growing up, outside of AHL 3, which it's like kind of like my 1A, 1B video games. AHL 94 was the best. And the fact that, everyone remembers, the Whaler jerseys in the game, same thing for the Nordiques and stuff like that. And now you're kind of getting that feeling again. And like I said, I really hope that there's some AHL 94 music, or I'm really curious to see what the graphics are going to be for both of these games. They're going to be in Denver and in Raleigh, but it's just the jersey matchup is going to be absolutely amazing. Like you're talking just the all light blue jerseys from top to bottom for the Avalanche. You're going to have the white jerseys with the greens from the Hurricanes. It's just going to be fun. It's going to be a great matchup. And for me, if there is a jersey matchup to have, if there's a must-watch game this season, if you're a Hurricanes fan or not, it's got to be Thursday night in Colorado and then on January 3rd back in Raleigh. Because, like, what throwback jersey matchups are you going to have that looks like that, where it's not just one team wearing a throwback? You got 2 teams wearing throwbacks from the same division when they face each other multiple times a year. That really says how far we've come. And like I said, the Hurricanes said it best. It's like, what are the odds of the fact that you're, wearing your Whalers jersey against the Nordiques, then you face off against the newest NHL team in the same year, duality of the NHL. So that's just something crazy to think about, the fact you're going back to the Adams division days. And now you're talking both teams since relocation wearing their former franchise jerseys against each other. Like, we've not seen a Nordiques jersey since relocation. The fact that it was a reverse retro that Colorado had that we've seen most recently, but then the Hurricanes went to a reverse retro of the Hartford jersey with the gray. Everyone loved it. And then of course with Whalers night, you go to the green jerseys and the white jerseys and stuff like that. I know everyone's still clamoring for the blues. I would love to see the blue Whalers jersey myself as well, but it's one of those things where you get the white jerseys again this year. But it's just the fact that the Hurricanes decided, hey, let's do it. Let's, we got Colorado twice. Let's do it at both home arenas. Boom, there you go. Now you got the best matchup jerseys by far. And like I said, the fact that you're getting the vibes of the old Adams division, where both of these teams really didn't like each other in an era of hockey where it was a lot of clutch and grabbing, a lot of extra fights, This is where rivalries really had bad blood for a lot of the regional teams, especially when you're talking about Nordiques against the Canadians, or you got Boston Toronto, or Toronto Detroit when they were still in the Western Conference, Hawks Blues, stuff like that. And like I said, even Whalers Nordiques, there's a lot of games where you're kind of like, this could be very interesting. And that's kind of what you're getting the feel of. Yeah, now the game in 2025-26 is more of a fast-paced, skilled type game compared to what was back then, but you're still getting those Adams division vibes. And like I said, I really hope the graphics and I hope the way they kind of present this does have that old school feeling, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun in terms of you're kind of leaning into, rooted in tradition, but, rivalry renewed type of stuff too. So, like I said, both of the jerseys are amazing. I love the Whaler jersey. I thought they've always looked great. And the fact that they brought the Nordiques back, down to the logo, down to the fleur-de-lis, pants, jerseys, helmets, the whole nine. I think the Avalanche killed it. I'm glad that the Hurricanes are leaning into it as well. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It should be really exciting to see what happens from there. I know we talk about it here in segment 3. It's going to be very interesting. And of course, on Thursday's show, we're going to preview more of the game itself between the Hurricanes and the Avalanche, or in this case, the Whalers against the Nordiques. We will talk about more of what's coming up in terms of certain players and stuff like that, especially, like I said, coming up here in segment 3. But it does add more intrigue to the game. Outside of guys who might be playing, guys who might not be playing, now you've got, a fantastic jersey matchup that I think a lot of people should be watching. And for what I've seen, gotta give props to the Avalanche, man. Their jerseys are selling like hotcakes. A lot of them are already sold out. So it's good for them. But for the Hurricanes, the Whalers stuff always sells every year. Whether if it's Whalers night or not, it's just something about the logo, something about the jerseys. They're always amazing. Of course, they have their own the Whalers stuff has their own dedicated store in Lenovo Center. So you know how much the Hurricanes, trying to lean back on that. And, got to remember where he came from. Came from Hartford. There you go. And now the fact they got the jerseys and stuff like that. They had the Cooperalls last year. They had the pants. The graphics were amazing. So overall, we're getting multiple Whaler games, not just the one against Utah, but now you're getting against Colorado twice, and it's going to be a lot of fun, in terms of, aesthetically, it's going to look great with the retro jerseys. You just have to hope what's possibly coming up next with where the two teams are at, especially with some guys who might not be playing on that game Thursday night. And then, of course, anything can change between now and January 3rd, but overall, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great game. I'm really excited. Of course, like I said, we'll talk about more for the Thursday show, but at least we kind of know where we're at now between the Hurricanes and the Avalanche, and the fact that we're getting some Whalers Nordiques vibes from the Ab division in 2025 and not in 1994. Now, that being said, the other piece of news we got to talk about is Shayne Gostisbehere and what that means for the Carolina Hurricanes for the rest of the road trip. Stick around. We'll talk about it here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get 300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you're getting a little something going on the action. Maybe it's your actual NFL team, or maybe it's your fantasy team. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. I know you guys heard me talk a lot through this episode about the Whaler jerseys and the Avalanche with the Nordiques jerseys, what that means for both these teams in terms of not just Thursday, but January 3rd as well. And for the Hurricanes, the fact that they have 3 Whaler jerseys to go with this year in terms of their games. But now we got to talk with the other big update, and that is Shayne Gostisbehere. Now, he did leave early on Saturday against the LA Kings, where the Hurricanes did come and win 4-3 in overtime. Unfortunately, didn't play in the Monday game against the Vegas Golden Knights. That's where we saw the debut of Charles-Alexis Legault, who, which I talked about on the Tuesday show, did pretty well. 12 and a half minutes, did finish with an even. Of course, during the pregame, definitely missed it, unfortunately. But there was a little bit of news on Shayne Gostisbehere, but there was more updates on Tuesday. That indicates that he, in terms of Gostisbehere, was sent back to Raleigh, and he will not be available for the rest of the trip, which is very unfortunate. And this is what Rod Brind'Amour said, of course, during the pregame. I was hoping that we'd maybe see him in the next game, talking about Vegas, because I didn't think it was going to be that bad. Hopefully we'll give him a couple days, and we'll see him in the not-too-distant future. Meaning, hopefully they have him back for their first home game after the road trip against the Vegas Golden Knights. So that is something to definitely keep an eye on, because now the fact that you're talking about a team that's already been down Jacob Slavin since the Philly game back on October 11th, now you're talking 10 days later and you're hearing now you're out Shayne Gostisbehere and he's gone for the rest of the road trip after you just lost to Vegas 4-1. And now you got Colorado on Thursday, and then you got Dallas on Saturday. Like, the back half of this road trip, you knew it was going to be hard regardless without Jacob Slavin. Now you're talking about losing Shayne Gostisbehere, who at the time of his injury was on a 4-game point streak and was tied for the lead in points for all defensemen with Colorado Avalanche's Cal McCarr. And then the trickle-down effect of that is, I talked about, Charles-Alexis Legault made his debut, did pretty well overall, but then you have Keandre Miller moving up to the first power play unit, and then you got Mike Riley moving up to the second power play unit with Sean Walker. And then that, you got Nikishin with Chatfield, and then you got Riley with Legault for the third pair. That's kind of your trickle-down effect, because now you're without not one of your top defensemen, but one of your top offensive defensemen in terms of that. And now you're looking at the power play units of Aho, Blake Ehlers with Jarvis and Miller. Then you have Hall, Stankov, and Svechnikov with Riley and Walker. That will make things very interesting in terms of the fact that if Ghost isn't ready to go, well, he obviously isn't ready to go since he went back to Raleigh. You have to hope he's ready for the October 28th showdown against Vegas for Hispanic Heritage Night, which is kind of crazy to think that within the fact of 8 days apart, you're playing Vegas twice and you're done playing them for the rest of the year until the Stanley Cup final, if that's the matchup. You have to hope he's ready. But this is where the Hurricanes are going to really have to dig deep, because now you're looking at a team that's without their best defensive defenseman, of course, in the entire, not just on the team, but the entire league in Slavin, who there's been no indications of him joining the team on the trip. And now you lost your best offensive defenseman in Gostisbehere, who, like I said at the time, was tied for points in defenseman with 7 with Makar. And now you're having 3 new guys on your defense, and 2 of them are paired together in Riley and Legault. That's going to be very interesting. The fact that your third pair, once again, I mean, they weren't bad against Vegas, but it wasn't. It's talk about getting thrown into the fire against a good team like Vegas, who was also down. Mark Stone, Ian Hill gets injured during the game and stuff like that. And now it's going to be very interesting to see what they do against Colorado, who, in all intents and purposes, is a team that's clicking. They are on an absolute roll right now. Of course, they got Wedgwood, who's been playing out of his mind in goal. We'll talk a lot more about this for the Thursday show. But you're talking about Makar, you're talking about Landeskog, you're talking about McKinnon, Marty Nietzsche, who's been on an absolute run. Oh, let's not forget to, you get to see Brent Burns again, which they're going to celebrate his 1500th game with the Hurricanes. So big props to the Avalanche for that. We also get Jack Jury. So now you're having a bunch of different former Hurricanes that you're facing on a Whalers Nordiques night. And you got a bunch of guys on the Avalanche who are on a complete run right now, and a goalie who's basically, taken over for the fact that Blackwood's out. You got Wedgwood playing some amazing hockey. So there's a lot going on for the Hurricanes. And now you got 3 new guys on the defense. Nikishin, he's doing really well, but he's still kind of learning the system still. Mike Riley's first season with the team, he's still learning. He's only played 2 games now. And then you got Charles Alexis Legault, who just made his debut on Monday night against Vegas. And all signs indicate that he's going to be playing against Colorado and Dallas for the rest of the road trip. And like I said, as of this recording, depending on when you guys listen to this, it could be Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. We might have an update on if the Hurricanes, call someone up from Chicago, or if they feel like, hey, we're just going to run with 6 and see what happens for the rest of the road trip. Because who do you really call up from Chicago that could be a good 7th defenseman? That's the reason why Charles, Alexis Legault was up, because the fact they lost Kochekov and Slavo didn't make the trip. That's why you had to go with him as your 7th defenseman. Which, hindsight, good thing they did, because they just lost Gostisbehere for the rest of this road trip. So it'll be very interesting how that plays out. But it does, bring a lot of different, implications of your defensive pairings are different. You got Miller Walker, Nikishin Sheffield, Riley with Legault. How does that go? It was kind of okay against Vegas, but I know the score says 4-1, but we all know the game was a lot closer than it was. It's just, Vegas, props to them, just were able to pull off that win and do what they needed to do. But now you're going against Colorado and Dallas, 2 other teams that a lot of people are favored coming out of the West. Talk about going from, you're playing 3 California teams where you completely swept the state of California, but now you're going back out east, progressing through, Nevada, then Colorado, then Texas. And it's just one big team after another big team after another big team, where it's just measuring stick games. And this is where the Hurricanes are really going to have to dig deep. And like I said, we'll preview more of the Colorado game on Thursday's show, but this is going to be huge. This is going to be a very big game for the Carolina Hurricanes. How are they going to figure this out? The fact that now you're down 2 of your top 4 defensemen on your entire team, one defensively as the best in the NHL, and your offensive defenseman who was at one point tied in points with the team you're facing on Thursday. So it'll be very interesting. But like I said, it was a scheduled off day for the Hurricanes on Tuesday with 2 days off between Vegas and Colorado for the fact they've also played 4 games in the span of a week. So they needed it, but there was some news. Like I said, now we know the Hurricanes are going to be in their Whalers jerseys at least 3 times. They're going to be facing the Avalanche in the Nordiques jerseys not once but twice this year. But now you're down another defenseman. You're down 2 of your defensemen already to start the season. One of them you haven't seen since the Philadelphia game back on October 11th, and now you just lost Ghost since the LA Kings game, and he's done for the rest of the road trip. Hopefully you have him back by the Vegas game on the 28th. So only time will tell, but it'll be very interesting. But the Hurricanes, even when they're not playing, they are definitely staying in the news. But hopefully, Gostisbehere isn't too bad. Hopefully see him back soon. And it should be very interesting over the next couple of games of how the Hurricanes do against the Avalanche and the Stars. But until we talk about those games, this will be the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making this today. Your second listen, go check out Locked On called Game Night. Every game, every night until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to keep up with me, I'm a one true Zach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also in Blue Sky, the Zachary Martin, where if you click the link trees in my bios, you can find all of my written content at thehockeywriters.com. I've been putting out a lot of stuff recently talking about, guys leading on point streaks, early season success for Seth Jarvis, a lot of game previews. We've not missed one game preview yet, so make sure to stay tuned for the one for the Colorado Avalanche on Thursday. And just did a notebook talking about what's been going on recently in the news about the Hurricanes in written form, so make sure to go check all those out at thehockeywriters.com, where the content will never stop for you guys as we try to bring a lot, talking everything about your Hurricanes. That being said, if you want to check out my other podcast, it's the Searchcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, we're on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Share with other Caniacs. They become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoyed the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Wednesday. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.